with our next keynote. Let me welcome to the stage Stuart Urwin-Mann, Global Procurement Director at Johnson Matthey. We're talking in an increasingly volatile business environment. Is business partnering a foundational focus area for procurement? So a warm welcome for Stuart, please.
Good afternoon. I decided to put a really long, funky title to try and make it sound really, really techy, because a lot of the presentations we talk about at these events are about technology. But what I want to talk about is the people behind the technology. And business partnering it's a bit of a modern term, but we is on and off because I can barely see these things. I'll talk a little bit about myself, what is business partnering from an academic point of view, but then I'll talk about the learned experience, and I'll give a reason why, because the company I work for at the moment, we've gone through a massive transformation. But so if we move on to the first slide, please. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to cover a quick intro, a little bit about business partnering from an academic point of view, and as I say, a bit of learned experience. Why is business partnering so important and something we should really, really focus on? Because a lot of us, from a procurement point of view, are investing heavily in technology, but there's a human aspect to it as well. And we've got to remember, most of our stakeholders, not all of them, are humans. And then a lot about my reflections, because we've gone through a massive transformation in Johnson Matthey. And we've learned an awful lot about ourselves, a company, and the function that we operate in and our role in the business. Okay, next slide, please. Quick intro about myself. So I've had quite a varied career. I'm in procurement now. I've spent probably half of my career in procurement, but I've been through program management. I've run factories. I'm an engineer by trade, so I started off designing car interiors. Back in the day when things like Rover and Saab brands still existed. You can put an age on me with that. Then I went through a fantastic time at Airbus, that's where I discovered procurement. I was a program manager and a program director at Airbus on the A380 program, so I was looking after major structures of the aircraft, and I had 250 people working for me at quite a young age, so I learned how not to do leadership very early on. But one thing I discovered is no product in this world exists without suppliers and a supply base behind it. So I got really interested in procurement at that point, and just then built a procurement career from there. It was by accident, not by choice, but I'm really passionate about procurement and the value it can bring. Okay, so what is business partnering? So business partnering for me, from an academic point of view, is understanding the business and the partnering aspect of it. Partnering is a two-way conversation. If we move on to the next slide, please. From an academic point of view, you've obviously got the business piece of the thing. It's an organised effort, so multi-functions. You've got partnering. That's having joint ambitions, joint objectives. It's you do things together. If you look at a football team, if you look at a marriage, you look at anything from a partnering point of view, generally, I say generally because I am married, but generally you've got a joint ambition and a joint direction. So from a partnering point of view and procurement point of view, there's some key aspects. I'll use the word quite a lot, but jointly, doing it together. Part of my learned experience is procurement functions over the last number of years, because we've been so invested in technology, I've become a little bit inward looking and a little bit worrying about the supply chain, less connected to the business and losing that connection to the business. And why do I say that? So the company I work for, Johnson Matthey, we're a FTSE 100 chemical company, and our CEO describes us as we're the best chemical company in the world that nobody's ever heard of. But one key factor of Johnson Matthey is we're 4 business divisions that are very different. And we've got group functions, and procurement is a group function, but it wasn't 3 years ago. Each site was autonomous. Each business had a level of autonomy from a procurement point of view and supply chain. So we had this really fantastic, you understood your site. Did you understand the wider Johnson Matthey? Did you understand the benefits of working together across Johnson Matthey? Nobody was incentivized to do that, but they understood their site. We then went through a massive transformation phase 1 of centralizing the function or having a center-led function. And some parts of the business lost connection to what was really important, and that's the business. So some parts of procurement became very inward-looking, very technology-looking, more looking at the supply base and what's important to procurement. Oh, thank you very much. Technology. But we lost that connection to the business, and we're going through another transformation now as the business has changed. The markets we serve have really changed. Post-COVID, we serve the automotive markets. We all know that's in crisis again. The chemical markets we serve are changing dramatically. The way they invest is changing massively. So this doing it together has become more and more important again in my company and many of companies I deal with. A lot of my suppliers are 10 times bigger than we are, so I get to understand their companies really well. And a lot of them are going through the same challenges as us. In today's business world, the priorities are constantly changing. And that's your internal priorities, your external priorities, your personal priorities, your functional priorities. Everything is changing, and it's changing quicker than it's ever changed before. Now, you've probably sat in a load of presentations around AI-enabled technology, et cetera, but one thing that's really important to me and my company is that business connection. And if you look at the graph at the bottom, this was a McKinsey study, and what was really clear in all of those studies that they did that brought all these charts together is the end-to-end mindset about managing P&L and margin has eroded. And it's become a higher and higher priority. So you think about managing from a lot of what we buy is rare earths, metals. So it starts at mining, digging it out the ground, all the way through to precious metals that we put into a product and sell to a customer. We're a B2B company. Understanding that whole margin story all the way through is really important. But what I found is procurement has been, again, looking at the supply base and understanding how margin is generated, how value is generated, and sometimes forgetting how that matters to the business. And I'll give an example of that. One of the businesses that I support in our company is in what we call hypergrowth. It's going from a 600 million revenue business to about 2.4 billion revenue business in the next 6 to 7 years. So we're going through this hypergrowth, massive investment. Are savings top priority on legacy products? Probably not. Are setting up new supply chains that are margin sensitive, we understand the cost base for this growth, and securing supply, sustainability, et cetera, is that a priority? Yes. In one of our legacy business, which supports automotive, margins are being compressed heavily in the last 5 years. So therefore, the priority there is driving cost out of the business whilst driving sustainability agendas and assuring supply. So understanding the business priorities is a key role of a business partner. And what we've done is we've reorganized our function and our design to replicate that chart there. So putting a lot of effort into our business partnering capability, understanding the internal customer, so truly understanding the customer from a centralized function. So we've put people back into the business. They still report and are rewarded from a centralized function, but we've put people that are sat in the business. They understand the problems the business faces, the rhythm of the business, the challenges. So they're actually sat at a site, they're very visible, they're very vocal, and they sit on the leadership teams. That's really important because you need to understand the rhythm and the psychology that's going on in that business. Because talking about savings all the time generally alienates you because quite often that's not the priority. And yes, I'm getting old and I've been in procurement quite a while. I've been in a number of organizations. But every procurement function is going through this transformation to get closer back to the business and understand the business better using technology. But information is key. And I love the phrase on the right-hand side there. I won't claim it's mine, but procurement should act as a knowledge broker. So having that end-to-end connection, understanding the supply base, not just from a margin point of view, but innovation, technology, how are they investing in sustainability, but also translating that into a language the business understands and needs is so important. Because what we've stopped doing in our company is we don't talk about savings. We talk about OP contribution. Because the businesses are sick of just hearing about savings and just chasing savings and shutting plants because we moved from supplier A to supplier B to save $10. Because back then, we were isolated away from the business. Now we're back in the business. We're starting to bring the market intelligence in, so understanding what's going on in our supply markets, but bringing that in a language our commercial teams understand and actually value. So procurement are now sat on the table in front of customers because we're bringing that end-to-end mindset in and helping our commercial teams be much more successful with our major customers. And just for a point of reference, one of the businesses that I support, that I sit on the leadership team there, is we've got more customers than suppliers. So we've got a really bizarre dynamic there. So bringing our supply chain in, because many of our customers are also suppliers. So bringing that circularity into that conversation, procurement has got such a critical role in that. Because our customer-facing people don't have the time or space to understand our supply chains. We bring that in, and together, that full commercial cycle is so powerful. But we have to understand the business and the language of that business. And it's really, really important. Again, recognizing our suppliers. We've got critical suppliers that, I've said it before, they're bigger than us, but they're so critical. 82% of my spend in my direct materials categories, i.e. product materials and production materials, are sole sourced. So therefore, treating a supplier at arm's length does not work. So getting our commercial teams to understand that I can't keep flipping suppliers because of IP management and sensitivities. Again, it drives that end-to-end mindset, but I can only do that when I'm sat at the table, not sat in my ivory tower, counting the pennies somewhere in London. It's being out there, sat in our factories and understanding what they're facing on a day-to-day basis. It's so important. And one thing we all do, I'm stood here today, we all like networking. We're always out there. Procurement are brilliant at learning. I think that's why I've stayed in procurement, because we're always out there learning. We've got brilliant events like this. We've all got networks. We've all got LinkedIn, and we all talk to each other, partly because we're looking for our next job, but partly because we like learning from each other. So bringing our networks inside the company is so powerful. And what I found more and more is referencing what our competitors are doing, because I've heard it through my suppliers, because sadly a lot of my suppliers also deal with my competitors. We learn a lot from that, and we start to understand, are we competitive, are we not? Are we cutting edge, or are we laggards? It's understanding that and deciding what's appropriate. Again, helps our commercial teams face our customers in a much better way. I'm really passionate of that end-to-end commercial connection. Talk about end-to-end margin management, but the commercial cycle, there's not a lot of difference between what procurement does and what our sales teams do. Somebody said to me there's 1% of difference between procurement and sales. Procurement, we know we're going to do a deal, we just haven't decided with who. Sales, you don't know if you're going to do a deal yet. That's the difference in stress, but if we can do it together, we can be so much more powerful. Just conscious of time, some of the skills that are needed, I think the first thing to recognize is none of this is new. Business partnering isn't new, but some of the core skills and understanding the language of the business is one of my learnings is stop pushing categories and strategies onto the businesses that they don't understand. It's not in the language that they understand. It's not in the priority order they understand. Understand the business first before you start selling a category strategy. And don't sell a category strategy that they weren't involved in. It's quite basic, but how many people do that? They sit in a centre somewhere and build a category strategy that the business has never heard of before, because this is what I've heard outside, this is what I'm going to do, is start with business first. I'm going to get some T-shirts printed for our company, is reminding people, we solve business problems using procurement capability, not the other way around. Remind yourself of that every day. I do, and we're here to serve the business and serve our customers. I'm ex-farmer, and something I love about the pharmaceutical industry is there is a patient at the end of everything we do, and I'm a patient, my son's a patient, my wife's a patient. That drives that end-to-end mentality. So always remind yourself there is a person at the end of the supply chain that benefits from something we do, and it drives that end-to-end mindset. One really important thing that we've learned is how we incentivize procurement. So incentivizing procurement isolated away from the business and not having joined and connected objectives is pointless, because you just drive yourself towards what serves your bonus. I know I do. But if you've got joint financial objectives within the business and within the functions, it's not just procurement, you create that pull because you're helping the business be more successful. And at the end of the day, our stakeholders are humans, they are driven by objectives. So understanding what drives a person and their function, as well as the business, will just get the conversation going and having that end-to-end connection and that motivation so you're all joined up. It's so important. And the last point on that, engage on the value proposition. Don't develop something centrally that the business doesn't recognize. We all do it. I do it. I still do it, even though I know it's wrong. But remind yourself, you're there to serve the business. So does the business value what you're spending your time on? And you are an overhead generally in procurement. So are you happy to stand there and recognize that they're paying your wages as a business? Are you serving them to what the business requires? So that understanding the business requirements, working with them to turn that into a category strategy and a change plan, that is so important. But again, how many of us don't do that? We separate ourselves from the business. There's many challenges. One of the biggest challenges is not having that mandate from the board. That's something we faced as a business, is as procurement has matured, is getting more and more recognition from our execs and our board of how important the external supply chain is and how important it is to connect all of that up. It's really exciting, the changes we're going through as a business, and that connection and the value proposition that we can bring is understood, it's connected. It's sometimes quite painful because if we're behind plan, we get beaten up for it, but rightly so, because the business is now valuing the contribution procurement can bring. One thing that's really important as well is agility. Nothing in business is stable anymore. Since COVID, everything has been thrown up in the air. Nothing is stable. So having the ability to be agile or helping the business understand when you can't be agile, as I said, a lot of what I buy is sole sourced. So sometimes I can't be agile because I don't have the buying power. I might be 1% of a company's revenue, but they might be driving 30% of my company's revenue. When you start getting the board to understand that, you behave differently. I can't just go and beat the supplier up and demand a rebate every year because I've missed my targets, because they'll just squash me like I'm an ant. I'm nothing to them. How do we partner with them? It's getting our R&D functions in the businesses to have really good connections with the business and start driving the relationship differently. But I can only do that if I'm connected in the business and helping the business understand what isn't agile, but then recognizing what I do need to build agility in. So designing out these sole source relationships has an impact on our competitive advantage, but it's driving sustainability agendas. It's driving de-risking and localization of our supply chain. So again, I only do that because the business requires that. And then why is this so important to me? And why am I not stood here talking about AI and things I really don't understand? But the people aspect of this, a CEO who's not in the business anymore once said to us, "Don't let your beautiful procurement process get in the way of my business progress." He might as well have punched me in the face, because that is an insult. And that is so true, because when you step back from that, I think, I clearly am not demonstrating that my teams understand your business. And as somebody probably dialed in, my old boss will be giggling at this because she'll know exactly who said this. But that was a real wake-up call for many of us, that when a CEO says that, that's bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers. And that really woke me up. And it's been a big driver behind our transformation, how we connect with the business. And we've restructured procurement to put people back in the business, as I said. So I sit on our leadership team, and I'm responsible for direct materials across the whole company. But I also sit on the leadership team of one of our businesses to drive that business connection. And it's the hyper-growth business. And it's going to grow through innovation from our supply base. So that's why I'm sat on that leadership team, so I can connect and understand with that business and drive that. So I've got two sets of objectives. I've got my direct materials, but I've got my business objectives. And I've got the same objectives as the CFO in that business. That's quite scary, but it drives that connection where we're all in it together. So that's really important. So that's all I wanted to say today. It's about the human aspect, is be connected, understand the business, understand the language of the business, and please stop talking about savings, because a lot of our businesses don't care. They care about margin and OP contribution. Some of them don't even care about that. It's about growth. So understand the language, understand the rhythm and the problems they face, then you can help solve those problems. As I say, we solve business problems using procurement capability, and I'm going to get a T-shirt printed with that on.
Thank you, Stuart. I hope you bring them with you next year. I look forward to seeing them. That could be a challenger for best freebie of the event, which is currently the Cooper socks. I've not seen any better yet. Anyway, let's open the floor to any questions for Stuart. Any in the room, first of all, before I move on? Right, one at the front.
Hi there, thanks.
Hiya.
Nilesh Patani from NHS England, Head of Contract Management. I just wondered, you're an engineer, you solve problems, and that's your background, but have you installed that culture in the four disparate teams you've taken over, and how have you kind of cascaded that down to your teams, really, and what have the challenges been? Because it sounds like, in your transformation, there have been different ways of working, and you've tried to build a cohesive team, but maybe I'm just extrapolating from what you've said.
You're absolutely right. And yes, we've spent a lot of time on why I talk about business partnering, because the core of that is understand the business. What challenges are they facing? What problems are they facing? And how can procurement help solve those problems? So the problem-solving aspect of that is understand the problem first. What I found in a number of companies I've worked for, category strategies were so supply-based looking, not understanding the business. So it wasn't solving a problem the business was interested in. Yeah, everybody needs savings. We all need to increase margin. But until you understand how you deliver that, you need to understand the problem first. So page 1 of any category strategy is, what is the problem statement? And it's not your problem statement, it's the business problem statement. So get in there, understand the problem, work with the business to develop what the solutions could be. That might involve supply base, it might not. We've had to restructure teams because of understanding that problem. I've had to exit people from the business because they didn't want to understand that problem. It all starts with, what problem are we trying to solve?
Okay. Any further questions? Oh, yeah, we have one there, and then we'll wrap things up on this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Very interesting, very fresh perspective. This is Robin from 4C. You talked a lot about savings and margin, and you mentioned about briefly on the objective side as well at the end. I'm keen to understand, do you have objectives in procurement around margin improvement and how those are cascaded within the teams?
Yeah, so in procurement, so our corporate function objectives are about margin improvement, cost containment, all the things you'd expect procurement to be incentivized by. The business objectives and how we've connected to the business are things like supply-based reduction, or de-risking the business, which means growing suppliers, so reducing the dependency on single-source suppliers, because for us to grow, we need to reduce our dependency on certain supply bases. China is a big market for us, but it's also a big supply market, and from a sustainability point of view, shipping things all over the world isn't the right thing to do. They're the business objectives that we get from the business. But yeah, we have the standard procurement objectives we'd have around de-risking the business from a generalistic point of view, like say margin. Cost containment is in and out of favour. Some of the businesses don't recognise cost containment. Finance do centrally, but some of the businesses don't really care about that because it's not real dollars. It doesn't impact directly the P&L. So yes, we do, but we've got disconnections there as well across the businesses. But that's what I'm saying about this connection to the business. Depending who's looking at what business, they have slightly different objectives to align with the CFO, COO in that business.
Thank you very much. We have one further question here.
Hi, Stuart. Richard Struthers from Rosemary Procurement. First of all, great presentation. Thank you for sharing. Have you found with this mindset that your team end up championing the business's own strategies and objectives? We've seen that in some of the work that we've done with our clients, and actually we put their strategy in all of our procurement presentations to actively promote it. And is that something you've seen a benefit from?
Absolutely. So a lot of our reviews from a procurement point of view, we start with business updates. So getting people, myself when I'm sat on our Catalyst Technologies business, championing that business of why I need resource centrally from the indirects team to support me, why it's so important in the Catalyst Technologies business. So we do a lot of championing. I can't even say it. You know the word. We do a lot of that to bring that uniqueness of the different business units into the centralized conversations. You reminded me of one thing that's a real success is I'm losing people to the business commercial teams because they're getting so connected and understanding the business and demonstrating that commercial acumen. They're actually taking on new roles and leaving procurement. So I say that as a benefit because I'm seeing people really progress their careers and mature. But it gives me a warm heart because it shows we really do understand that business now. And we're part of the business, not a corporate seagull function, for those that know what that means. We are in the business, not somebody in our ivory tower flying over and doing something that seagulls do. So yes, we're championing, but we're also losing people into those businesses because of that, because people are getting really excited about what they're learning.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for the questions. We will wrap things up there now. But Stuart, I will let you in on one thing. The talk of the staff room right now apparently is both of us have found our stunt double, looking visually. I'm not sure if anyone else has clocked that. It's been the talk of the talk of the staff room that we found our doppelganger on stage. So anyway, thank you for that. Next time, either of us is an action film, we know what to do. But anyway, thank you very much for your time and joining us here at Procurement and Supply Chain Live.
Thank you.